Good afternoon, everyone. My name is King Leung with InvestHK. I'll be the host for you today. I'd like to welcome all of you to our FinTechHK global webinar series with the fast-tracking your Asian expansion through Hong Kong strategic investors. Now, frankly, the Hong Kong FinTech has come a long way in recent years. And all this great traction that we are seeing in recent years would not have happened without the great support of our partners. And one of the major partners of us is AMTD. And essentially, we would like to pick the brains of Kelvin, the mastermind of AMTD, and also the other portfolio companies of AMTD today, to share with us about some of their own experiences in entering the Hong Kong markets and the help that they're all getting from the ecosystem where essentially can catapult them to higher heights. Now, one thing that I would like to share with you is that for the little time I spent with Miss Hong Kong, I've been trying to get a lot of feedback from various companies overseas. And there's one gentleman who is the CEO of a fintech company from Europe, and he said it best. I'd like to share with you what he said to me. Essentially, when I asked him about his decision to come to Hong Kong, and what's the one single thing that can really help him to accelerate his progress in entering a new market? Is that capital? Is that the connection with the clients? So what is it? Essentially, he replied to me succinctly, and he said, if he has to name one thing that can help him, and that would be the ability to connect with the right strategic partner. And by having that connection, the rest of the things will follow. Now, so with that, I just want to welcome our first speaker today, Choi, the chairman of AMTD, to share with us his vision about building an ecosystem, the amazing spider net, and all the exciting things that he's working on. So Kelvin, off to you.
Thank you, King. Thank you, InvestHK. I think it's my honor to be here with all of you today. For AMTD, the company that I've been building for the past 5 years, I think I see it not as a traditional financial services company. I see it more like, I'm building out, a community. I'm building out an ecosystem. And ultimately, I think it's really about how I build out something that provide more stickiness to every client, that provide more values to our every partners, and ultimately making the overall value creation diagram very clear, very transparent, and actually very extraordinary. So this is something beyond that on a singular basis, what an individual company can build or can do by itself. It's really about a partnership approach, a joint collaborative model. But then I think the world in terms of, today's, I think, of course, is going very digitalized. I think, and also making also the country to country, areas to areas, all the restriction or all the fine line to become more fluid. So I think now it's actually really about cross-dimensional. So how I see AMTD when I first built it, originally as an independent wealth manager in the city, I built it out, first of all, thinking about investment banking model that I've been long time investment banker. I think investment bank, as one example, we always talk to the chairman, we always talk to the CEO, formulating the next strategy, the next fundraising approach, but really thinking about, what's next for every companies, right? How to raise the cash, how to use the cash, how to further grow the company. So I see it not just as one point in time, as a particular services that we provide, IPO, a bond transaction, or anything in particular that we raise the funding for a particular client. It's really about how we understand the purposes, the business intention, and also about the long-term vision of every entrepreneur. So ultimately, it's not about building out just, the connectivity with a particular company. It's really with the founder, with the owner, with the business management, with the people talents. So how we are connecting, the dots are really connecting in between companies to companies, but really about with every entrepreneurs. So I built it out, for the company, AMTD over the years, from investment bank, helping a client to raise the money, asset management, helping every client to further doing the asset allocation, to further invest and also manage on their behalf. And ultimately also we invest together with them, upstream, downstream, finding the right opportunities to value create for the overall. And this is our strategic investment pocket. And we also, from the old days of the company, previously, the company was founded by Chen back in 2003. So very interestingly, AMTD, the name, the forward, actually means or coming from the abbreviation of at minus times divide. So it's number correlation, really looking also into data, how to make good use of all the data to do financial services. But in this new world, as we said that, we cannot just focus into financial services to do only financial services, right? So that's why, I'm trying to build something out, the ecosystem, as I said, both having the financial services dimension, but also the non-financial services dimension, building out, or intersect with different business contexts, cutting into some different verticals. So nowadays, AMTD, I see it as building out from our little idea back in 2015, and now that we on an overall basis, I build it out from a small idea to hopefully some bigger idea to plant the seeds for a much hopefully bigger future. So the idea, the four words actually now represent also our core verticals. So the I is our AMTD International, comprising our investment bank, our asset management businesses, and also our investment in traditional financial services play. So we are now the largest independent investment bank in Asia. We headquartered in Hong Kong, but then we serve clients across Asia, into Asia capital market, but also all the way to US and other major capital markets in the world. So we listed ourselves now that we are the first Hong Kong financial institution to list on NYSE. And earlier this year, we make our secondary listing in Singapore. And this company also become the first dual class share scheme company listed in Singapore. So that's for the I. And then for D is really everything that we are building out in the digital space. So as we said that, I really see that now the world getting very much digitalized. So doing anything, especially for financial institution, into the digital world, planting the seeds, is really not that much of an aggressive play, but a very defensive play. That we must do it, to ensure that we're ready for the next age. I mean, especially now that COVID-19, I think everything or the whole world become more digital living. So I think this is actually what we build out in terms of the digital financial licenses, digital connectors, our ecosystem, our data analytics, and also anything that we invest into non-financial services. So for example, we have the opportunity, later you will be able to hear from Norma, a very successful entrepreneur. So that is another example that we invest into space, non-financial services, but building out ultimately our overall ecosystem. So hopefully this will be something that ever growing, ever extending, but ultimately creating more values onto the overall and creating a bigger value pie for everyone. So later on, you will also be able to hear from Policypal, Val, and also from Capbridge, Johnson. So we're very glad to also let the all the participants today to know that these are also two new members to the AMTD SpiderNet. That right now, upon rebuilding our overall ecosystem, we use what we call the fusion-in approach. That we will use, share swap. That focusing into financial services, digital financial services companies. That we use share swap and plus cash component to acquire controlling interest, but really creating an interest alignment to find the right entrepreneurs, the right platform to integrate ourselves together. Again, building our ever-growing SpiderNet, but a much bigger pie for the overall AMT Digital. So this is something very interesting that we are working on. Not just limit into Hong Kong, Singapore, the whole of Asia, but really about a global play. So I think hopefully we have the opportunity for all of you listening to this today that to explore this fusion-in strategy and fund, and to build out something digital world together, all of us. And just to close it off, then for the non-financial services side, we are also very much into education and some value investment, but we call it, now that we make some very good property investment for a very long-term basis, but into education. I mean, it's really coincide with what I see in terms of the most values into every company. It's really the people talent, the entrepreneurs, all the key management. So how we working right now that we have the opportunity to work with the Polytechnic University of Hong Kong. We built out the first FinTech school in Hong Kong. Now this year, giving out PhD degree in FinTech, and then together with the National University of Singapore and Singapore Management University and Xiaomi, we're building our digital leadership program for the next 5 years. So I'll stop here, and then hopefully giving you a sense of how who we are, and also about the ecosystem approach, and also a little bit more about the AMTD SpiderNet, our ecosystem, and AMTD Digital. Thank you.
Great. Wow, Kelvin. I mean, every time I listen to, I've known Kelvin for some time, every time I heard him speak, I learned something new. He has always something new coming up. Now, I guess the one thing I like to do now is to reach out to one of the, I guess, new members of the family, Johnson, who's the founder and CEO of Capbridge, a very interesting company that also helped solve the needs of fundraising for folks in various sectors, of course, including FinTech. So with that, I just want to have this question for you, Johnson. And that is, obviously, you've been in Hong Kong market, Singapore market for a long time, and in various positions. And I guess, can you share with the audience, because we've got some audience from not only in Asia, but also in the other parts of the world, including Europe and so forth. So can you help us understand about the industry pain points that you observed over years that led you to start Capbridge, and in terms of what kind of solutions you're offering, particularly on fundraising and so on? So off to you, Johnson.
Thank you. Thanks, King. Thanks, InvestHK and Kelvin for the invitation. It's really great to be here to share some of our learnings and the journey that we have. So I founded Capbridge because I've been an entrepreneur for quite some time. So Capbridge is my fifth company now. So I've also listed 2 companies prior to this, and also exited 2 others. Throughout the journey, one of the key pain points, as what King was saying, is that the whole fundraising, we've observed this to be quite ad hoc and quite haphazard. So we thought to ourselves, there has to be a better way. So we started the Capbridge, particularly to solve the problems in the financing space, and particularly in the private market space. So we have 2 parts of the business at Capbridge Financial. The first part of the business is really investment syndication platform. So this is a cross-border multi-channel platform. We are fully born in the web. So, from day one, we designed this to be digital. So we're one of the early adopters of, Zoom. We use a virtual data room. We log every single transaction and activity on our platform. We have a global NDA. We do KYC on all the investors coming in. So we actually reduce any of the time wasters, and we make sure that the investors on board is actually serious. And we can do that because everybody is bounded by a common terms of service. So what we do is that we run this thing called the lead and co-invest business model, whereby we have the lead investor come in. So the lead investors are typically, professional investors, so VC funds or a single family office that can price and do the diligence. And we work with various other things. So various other investors, such as, we work with the other family offices, we work with the private banks. So we have distribution agreements with several private banks. We also work with the ultra high net worths and also the individual investors. And the whole point is that companies, they like it because we actually help to actually close out the round faster, and the co-investment investors like it too, because obviously they can piggyback on the lead investors business model and the diligence and the pricing that they have done. So for this, we can actually compress the time for the bringing the co-investors in. The lead investors like it because obviously the round becomes bigger, and companies are staying private longer and all. So it all works really well in terms of helping to compress their time and showing more deals to the investor. So this is really our first part, and it's a platform play. The second part of business is called One Exchange, and what we have also built is a private exchange. So this is a venue whereby companies can trade their equity and make their instruments tradable. And by integrating the first part of the business with our tradability, we form a very nicely and integrated holistic private capital markets solution. Because for most investors, they always ask, where's my exit? So, by having the opportunity to have partial liquidity, this actually makes the investment in insurance fund more attractive. And we are also backed by the Singapore Exchange. So SGX is our investor and shareholder. And we also recently got in money from SG Innovate and also Hong Kong Cyberport. So the whole idea here is that we can build an integrated market. We actually make the investable feature by actually also fractionalizing this and making it a smaller ticket size, thereby pulling more investors. And we also make it more tradable. And this is all the key features and the value proposition that we build. So the summary is that basically what we're trying to do is that we're trying to bring the best of the public market, private markets, and we really see the public and private markets merging out. And the ability to help to raise this and to remove the pain points would be a value add, and that's exactly what we are building at Capbridge.
Well, thanks a lot, Johnson. I'm sure that the audience would love to learn more about what you do. But in the meantime, I just want to quickly change gear to another member of the SpiderNet, and that is Val Yap, founder and CEO of Policypal, a digital insurance company. But before I jump into the more serious business matter, I just want to sort of wish Val a happy birthday again. So thanks for joining us amidst your personal time. And I'm sure that you'll be celebrating tonight, right?
Thank you.
All right.
So
okay, so now I guess the one thing that is on a lot of people's mind in recent year, particularly folks who have been following what's happening in Hong Kong, is that there have been a number of virtual or digital insurance licenses that have been given out. So that basically accelerate the interest of even the incumbent insurance companies to adopt lots of other InsurTech, digital transformation kind of solutions. And with Val, basically, she's sitting right in the middle of this big transformation in the market. So with that, obviously, insurance sector has been gaining a lot of momentum. And just want to hear from you, Val, about your observations of the major opportunities in the insurance sector from what you see, because I know that you operate in different parts of Asia. So I'd like to hear from you, Val. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, and thanks AMTD and of course Invest Hong Kong for this opportunity to share about what Policypal is doing and see the upside on the opportunity on what we can actually continue to grow on. So a brief background, Policypal is based out of Singapore. Today we provide over 3 billion of insurance coverage to consumers and SMEs in Singapore. We work with 30 insurance companies for the past 2.5 years since graduation from Singapore regulator MAS Fintech Sandbox. So over this period of time, we've seen a lot of digitalization in the general insurance broking sector. But actually, there's a huge opportunity, especially for life insurance. Just to name a few, in terms of like on-demand insurance, all the way to like sharing and also gig economy that is growing so much, especially during this period of time. And with this COVID-19 outbreak, it's really disrupting the whole insurance distribution that we've been seeing that actually are highly driven by insurance agency for the past decades. Over a period of time, we can see that like with the shift from face-to-face meeting to actually Zoom session for advisors to actually provide the advisory sessions to the consumers, SMEs, have now shifted to become digitalization. So we can see that countries and also regulators are opening up and a lot are loosening in terms of like what are the physical requirements that was all set in place for insurance advice and also, of course, the financial needs analysis. So during this past few months, we have been digitalizing the whole application flow from the fact find needs analysis and as well as the KYC process for consumers to apply for the insurance product directly through our platform. So we can see that the regulatory aspect, of course, there are some challenges that a lot of startups and companies have to overcome. And with the new startups that, of course, in Hong Kong, we've seen a couple that gotten a digital insurance company license, have helped to penetrate, especially for health, life insurance segment. A huge growth opportunity that we can see partnering, of course, with AMTD moving forward is the opportunity to actually tap onto the underserved and also the areas that especially on the Hong Kong and Chinese market that currently they still have to meet face-to-face, but actually we are able to digitalize the whole application process. And that's actually a very untapped segment, which is foreign currency dominated long-term savings plan. Because previously a lot of consumers tend to buy short-term savings plan through their agents based on the relationship that they have. But through the ecosystem players that we have been partnering for the past few years, of course, in the Asian market, we see that there's actually an opportunity where we are able to actually correlate and build up this affinity channel. So being part of the AMTD SpiderNet collaboration, there's a lot of opportunities that we are able to collaborate with. Could be Capbridge, DataCook, where we are able to introduce on demand and suitable type of insurance products by actually understanding the consumer's day-to-day requirements and the needs. The data that we are able to aggregate could be from lifestyle, could be from DataCook, what kind of cuisine, what kind of activities that the consumers are actually consuming on a day-to-day basis. This way, even on the agency level, we are able to collaborate with them by actually creating only where people call it a hybrid distribution channel, having a both face-to-face and also digitalized, empowered customer engagement, where we can build on extra data sets. And this actually help in terms of new product creation and also help in terms of bringing down the insurance premiums that previously insurance companies are aggregating the whole big demand based on historical records. But now, because of all these new data sets that we are able to tap onto through the SpiderNet network by AMTD, we now can actually create insurance products that are way more suitable and also, of course, much more accessible and affordable through the digital platform. So moving forward, we see that actually with all this, we are also able to digitalize personalized advice, because a lot of people say that general insurance products are able to do it digitally. But life insurance, a lot of times you need to meet face-to-face and having a human relationship because there's a need on personalization. But with all this digitalized data that we are aggregating, we can now build on digitalized and personalized advice planning for consumers and also SME out there. So we see an uptrend, and of course in the next few years, we can see more life insurance products that will be digitalized and of course regionalized as well.
Great, thanks a lot, Val. And I'm sure that this is also another hot topic that I'm sure that there will be some questions from the audience for you shortly. Now, I just want to quickly change gear again. Now we have moved from a big ecosystem builder from Calvin to this new generation of funding platform in Johnson to digital insurance with Val. Then I want to introduce you something that's totally different ballgame, and that is Norma. And this is so exciting that Norma is from Hong Kong, ex-banker, and now a very famous KOL. That for those of you from Hong Kong, I think you know what I'm talking about. In fact, I didn't know about these numbers until recently. That Norma has been, wow, gosh, just last year alone, Norma had 57 million social followers. This is amazing. And actually, cumulatively, she got over 6 billion views. I mean, and for those of you who are in fintech, you'd be like, wow, what is she doing here? We have all this serious fintech boring stuff. So, but then you got this exciting, company. So in a way, the reason why I think it's going to be an interesting conversation with Norma from DataCook is that obviously the virtual banks is about particularly this new trend of virtual banks and also the digital transformed incumbent banks. It's all about catering to the user experience, like a new kind of products that tailor to the lifestyle needs of the consumers. So, but then again, the people may ask, so how can I grasp the insights in the behavior of consumers? Because oftentimes banks are the last thing that me as consumer want to share my social behavior data with. So with that, I just want to pick on the brains and also experience from Norma about your viewpoint of how do we sort of connect, right, in your world, your great experience with observing the consumer behavior and how that can be beneficial to the financial services companies. So,
all right,
Norma.
Sure. Thanks, King, for the introduction. I mean, thanks, Invest Hong Kong, and also thank you, Calvin, AMTD, for the invitation, and really nice to be here. Just a really quick overview of what DataCoke does for those who don't really know about us. So we are actually a content-driven lifestyle brand focusing on servicing the younger foodie generation in China. So we were founded in 2012 out of Hong Kong. And we now cover close to 60 million followers across the country. So aside from doing like foodie content, we also provide a wide range of services such as e-commerce, where we mainly sell DataCoke branded products, as well as a retail presence where you can find our physical cooking class stores in 4 cities across China. So I also thought about, our mix today of speakers are very interesting. And I would love to kind of share, our grasp on consumer behavior and preferences and how it can potentially benefit, financial services companies. Well, I was thinking, let's take a look at the ecosystem as a whole and kind of the challenges that, persist. So for example, insurers, the touch point with customers have always been very front end loaded, meaning, you sell a policy to a customer, but then their contacts or interaction with the customer basically drops off afterwards. With banks, as you mentioned before, it's not really the most, I guess, friendly institution where consumers really like to share the data with. So I guess in short, basically banks and insurers usually have limited data set or limited engagement with consumers. And nowadays, I think consumers are spending a lot more time interacting digitally with their banks and insurers. So what that means for these financial services companies are that their personal touch or face time has dropped off significantly. So in order to make up for that drop off, I guess they can compensate by getting as much as possible any kind of digital data and footprint of their potential customer and leads. So for DataCoke as a lifestyle hub in Hong Kong, like we have about 1.5 million followers in the city and all across China. Our grasp on social consumer behavior and preferences can probably benefit financial companies in 2 ways. One, I think we can potentially act as a channel for them to sell their products and services. And number 2, I think it's for them to gain insight about potential customers. So, getting back to adding value, which has always been having, limited data set and engagement, as a lifestyle content provider, I think we can help the ecosystem by becoming a lot more integrated and become a more sticky part of the consumer lifestyle experience. So by being more integrated, you can get a lot more data and really understand what your customers want and need. So recently, we are actually currently in discussion with a big financial services company with a global footprint in terms of, how they can offer how we can offer our content onto that platform specifically for that reason. So they can understand their customer lifestyle better. At the same time, we're right now also kind of exploring how they can leverage our existing fan base so they can, offer more targeted or service offerings to our customers and fan base.
Wow. Well, what can I say? I mean, this is something that, again, for the financial services sector, it's going to be like a new gold mine. If you can connect that with the social side of consumers' behavior and the integration of data and all that, that's going to be the new holy grail. So with that, I really want to extend this from Norma to Calvin, because now for those of you who've been following, I mean, again, as I said, by the way, I just don't know how much time Calvin sleeps every night. You're like on the run all the time. Now, so for those of you who've been following, actually the AMTD has another thing that made the news recently, and that is a company called Airstar, and that is a virtual bank that was invested by AMTD. That's the second virtual bank that became operational, I think last week, right? So again, this is something that is all over the news for those of you outside Hong Kong. Now, I think for those of you in FinTech, another big topic is open data, open API. And this is something that is huge, and the implication is just enormous. Now, with what Norma just said, and now it's a good segue to sort of hear from Calvin about, so what do you think about, the sort of openness of data beyond financial services that can allow the bank to get a deeper understanding, appreciation of the needs of the customers, and subsequently offer them a better product, better experience. So Calvin?
I think, that's exactly about, what I mentioned at the beginning about the ecosystem approach that we have been, I'm a strong believer into. So I think ultimately nowadays for the digital world, so everything coming, digitally, very easily accessible. But also that, the customer, they are in greater power. So basically they have more choices, they get exposure to different choices and also items, I think, in no time. So I think everything is really about, the first impression and also what you can offer, I think, at the right time, but not, in the next second. But if you can offer something in this particular second, you don't want to wait until the next second. So I think this is something that, we are a strong believer into what we are building about, overall multi-dimensional approach, that we need to have the cut, we need to have the exposure into, we need to have the influential power into not just the financial services side, but also into, the different kind of like user base, in terms of different non-financial services platform that we can work together with. Dayco, I think, as one example, but there are also many others out there that I think ultimately is not just about the what we can do. It's really about what the customer want, or how to enrich the user experience, right? So I think, as I said, the customer today is they are in great power. I think if you also look into all the younger generation, the millennials, I think what they need, are very much, or what we talk about the pain points or the most needed areas is really surrounding what they do, what they are interested to read, what they're interested to help, like, to spend money day by day. They may not think about, particular things in terms of the need is directly financial services related. They might just think that they want to buy something of this particular nature. Of course, they, then we could offer some type of consumer finance, the support. But surrounding everything they do, from the first thing they wake up in the morning, anything that they could make investment, anything that they could think about, the certain wealth management component, or anything they could think about, maybe doing some, precautions or some safety measure for the future, maybe it's buying some insurance product or doing some, other, spending pattern on an overall basis. You basically just cannot be focusing on to what you can provide as a financial institution or as any digital platform. You just need to, again, right, think about more from a customer-centric, standpoint. So I think this is actually what we are doing. I think it's also about, better the overall understanding of your client about, what they need or what they will need next. So thinking about, the same approach that we are applying for the institutional side, for the corporate side, we are, working on to that also for the customer side, or even more. So I think ultimately it's about, when we talk about open data, open platform, I think for Singapore, for Southeast Asia, as one example to share, even from Hong Kong side, I think we have the opportunity from AMTD side. We participated in a platform founded by various parties, including the Singapore Monetary Authority of the MAS, including the IFC, including also the Southeast Asia Banking Association, and also us, AMTD, and also MasterCard. So that's really what we call the AFIN, ASEAN Financial Innovation Network, but creating what we call the Apex Exchange. connecting the different vendors, different service provider, trying to really connecting a digital solution roadmap to support and enable the overall digital servicing or product offering. So I think the new world, I think we see it exactly like the same way. So as I said, earlier, it will not be very much finite defining whether I'm a financial service company. I could be equally financial services, but I'm also a community builder or contributor. I could be, very much like, Norma, you see her as a famous KOL, but she could be also offering, by partnering with others, to offering something into financial services or into, maybe partnering with Val to offer insurance products, right? Into anything that, good or bad happening, within the kitchen, right? For example, something in the future is really surrounding the digital day-to-day life. And exactly, I think, the COVID-19 currently, I think we see challenges, but beyond that, opportunities arising. So I think, anyone that could be following, anyone that could be supporting the digital day-to-day living, enabling, making everyone's day-to-day living even better, more facilitating, and more supportive. I think those platforms will be in greater power in the future.
Great. Well, this is definitely another big trend, and obviously AMTD has been doing a lot of things in that direction. Now, I guess I'd like to sort of look at it from another angle now, because we have some audience on this webinar from overseas. So obviously looking at expansion to Asia, with Hong Kong being one of the markets in consideration, it can be a scary thought about, well, if you don't know the people, don't know the regulation, it can be scary. Now, but then I'd like to really sort of hear from Val this time, that about your own experience in considering the Hong Kong market, and perhaps you can share a little bit more about what the AMTD as a strategic investor partner can help you to navigate through this process. So Val, can you share a few thoughts?
So first of all, being an entrepreneur, taking start in any country itself is challenging enough. And being based out of Asia, the key challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs talk about is that for every expansion, you need to go through a new regulator, understanding the local market, and also find the right partner. So for Policypal, we've been very fortunate that we actually met with Calvin 3 years ago, and really understanding how he actually built up AMTD, and on top of that, having the really good interaction with the resolution team in Hong Kong that has 20 years track record servicing SME and also, of course, the corporate clients. So Hong Kong itself have really good client base, touching on not only Hong Kong market, and also, of course, the mainland big opportunity. So with this collaboration together with a strategic partner, AMTD, Policypal can actually accelerate our growth by actually doing collaboration together with the Hong Kong resolution team. Collaborating with them in the sense that looking at actually the historical data and also the clientele that like the Hong Kong team is, they are already servicing, and how Policypal can actually integrate our current product offerings that together with the Hong Kong and also the Greater Bay market solution. So with Calvin's vision to actually build up the whole financial services platform, we see that not only collaborating with Hong Kong resolution team is one angle, we are able to also tap onto the opportunity to potentially collaborate with ESTA team, and of course the digital bank team in Singapore. So this gives Policypal as a startup that has been operating for 4 years, that a lot of companies like ourselves would like to accelerate our growth into new markets to actually fast track and of course you can call it leapfrog, that like we can skip the whole licensing requirement, where we are able to collaborate with the ecosystem player and tap onto the market that are not penetrated because of the high cost of distribution. Because financial products wise, a lot of times we startups are kind of competing with the incumbents or maybe the giants out there that actually have huge marketing budget that they are able to pay high commission or maybe high distribution costs to the consumers out there So for us as a startup, it's all about like being part of this platform where we are able to integrate, where of course it's called a spider network, because we are able to integrate with many other players out there to add on our offerings and penetrate, like it could be the small value all the way to higher ticket size by collaborating and understanding the key needs, just as what Norma have mentioned just now. Really understanding the lifestyle aspect, because these days people want personalization. They want products that are tailored to their life moments, and how do we actually know about that? It's really identifying critical moments that like we are able to introduce super products. So for example, no one actually wake up thinking that they are really excited, I'm going to buy a life insurance policy today. It's really understanding the consumer behavior and what has changed in terms of their life stage, and when is the right moment to actually engage in and offer the suitable type of like products to them. So like with this collaboration with AMTD, we see that like as a young startup for Policypal, we really have the big opportunity to actually spearhead like the insurance market in the whole Asia, partnering with of course Calvin's vision to make it an international platform.
Great. Now, I'm also conscious of time, and I want to also pick on Johnson, because Johnson, you have been in Hong Kong, in Singapore, so you will really understand both markets really, really well. So if there's just one opportunity that you want to pinpoint with your current business, that you see that the Hong Kong market is of great potential, so what would that be?
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, I mean, I want to come back to your point, King, about the community and the building the right connections. I think that to us is really key. You know, when we go to a new market, it's really how do we engage with the right partners, the strategic connections that we can build, and you know how to activate that. So for us, right, one of the key values is obviously to find the right partners. You know, our whole business model revolves around how we can help company raise funds. So you know, the whole name Capbridge comes from Capital Bridge, and we also see ourselves the bridge between Hong Kong and Singapore, and kind of the bridge, the Series B, the Valley of Death, and how to bridge between the private markets and bridge it to the public markets. So we're all here to kind of help to actually remove the pain points and solve this. So for us, you know, we've designed this to be global and digital from day one. You know, so you know, for those audience out there who are trying and looking to raise money, you know, our process is very straightforward. You basically come to www.capbridge.sg, and we have a very intuitive interface to basically come on the board. And that also works for the investor side. So as mentioned, we have different use cases. We try to personalize each of the interaction, and we've also now beta launched our app on the app store. So the whole point about the setting up in new markets and doing that is really on the connectivity, and really trying to activate the right groups and building the community. And I think the notion for us is that, yes, to me, the first step is really to identify the strategic partner, to really then have the right resources and advice on how to get this done. So, you know, for us, you know, we've always been very keen to always build up the networks, and for us as a platform for this to really work, you know, we have to go regional, and we have to build to the critical mass and the network effect.
Great. Now, I guess the last question I would like to ask, this is for Norma, before we open up to Q&A from the audience, is that so we talk about the finance side, business models, you know, are arguably important, but somewhat also boring stuff, right? But I think the interesting part nowadays is about, you know, the social marketing, the social commerce, you know, getting connection with the consumers, which is not easy, to be honest. And particularly, we look at the enormous growth in the mainland China market. This is a lot of learnings from that market for the rest of the world. So with the privilege of operating both in the Hong Kong market as well as in the mainland China market, but perhaps Norma can share a few thoughts to our audience, particularly folks from overseas, about what do you see in terms of the observation of the market in social content marketing in mainland China versus the Western markets?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, social marketing is so important. It's fun and it's exciting, but at the same time, it's definitely a full-time job. It's probably a full-time job for a full team. You know, I think having been in the mainland market for the past 5 years, going on 6, comparing that to, you know, how we do social marketing here in Hong Kong and for the rest of the world, I can really think of 2 main differences in terms of the social marketing ecosystem or landscape in China. I think number one, the landscape in the mainland market is probably a lot more vibrant and complex at the same time, because there are a lot more platforms to navigate and understand. So for example, you know, for our overseas viewers and fans, we basically just do YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, maybe Twitter if you're in the US. So you can basically name all the platforms in one hand. But, you know, in the mainland, we basically deal with like 20 plus platforms, right? Including the TikTok, the Kuaishou, the Bilibili. I think because this is, in order to kind of fully leverage the power of social media, it is really important to really understand the user demographics behind each platform. So who's active on these platforms, who's being engaged. So I think that's what makes the China market very exciting but complex at the same time. The second difference I can think of, I think, is from the user experience standpoint. It's a lot more advanced in the mainland market, where it's almost like close to a seamless integration between content and consumption. I think that's really important. So as a result, conversion rate is noticeably higher on social marketing platforms in the mainland compared to the rest of the world. So those are 2 key differences I can think of. But I think I also want to, you know, talk about one key similarity, right, which is really important. I think social media and social marketing is probably the most important channel to promote your business, promote yourself as a founder and a business owner, and to truly engage with your customer. So going back to the point that you guys were discussing about how to get into a new market, I think really marketing yourself and promoting your business and yourself on a platform like LinkedIn can probably help you open a lot of doors when you go into a new market.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I'm looking at the clock, so we got a bit of time to take a few questions from the audience. And now, since we just had some comments from Norma, perhaps we'll take the one that's directly relevant to what you just said. And let me just jump to that one first. Let's see. Okay, so this is for Norma. Any suggestions on resources for learning more about the mainland specific social media platforms for non-Mandarin speakers?
Well, I guess I would have to offer up myself as the main resource. I mean, really learning from people, you know, who's done it and really, you know, in the trenches. Understand the local market is important. I think that's probably the fastest way to learn, right? So I would look for people like advisors or even potential investors with networks that can help open up doors and kind of, you know, connect you with the right people. Even though you don't speak the local language, you can still understand the dynamics, understand the game and the algorithm behind each platform, and to kind of, you know, maximize their effect. So once again, I think I always point to LinkedIn nowadays to kind of build these kind of early stage business relationship. You can also find me on LinkedIn, you know, DDC Norma, or find me on Instagram.
Great. All right. Now, there's another question, and this is for Calvin. So the question is, for overseas market entry to Hong Kong and China, what are the pros and cons, say incorporating SPV in Hong Kong versus a WOFE in China? So Calvin, any advice?
Well, I think Hong Kong is a global financial center, right? So the market is wide open. So there aren't any, for example, currency restriction. I think funding in and out flows, you know, from Hong Kong. I think so on an overall basis, I see Hong Kong as a very appropriate and best place. I think one of the best place, I think globally, for people or new business entrepreneurs to initiate their dreams and also what they want to achieve, right? In terms of like business setup, I think on an overall basis, I think in Hong Kong, you have so many professional institutions, you have so many financial institutions on an overall basis. I think just the newly granted the 8 virtual banking license, I think we are just the new 8 to add on to the several hundreds. I think just for banks, I think you have many ones in Hong Kong, but not to mention also many different types of non-bank financial institutions, right? So I think, but to put it easier, just quite similar to Norma, if you have any further questions or if you need help, come to me, come to AMTD.
Yep. Now, I guess there's another one that can be addressed by Kelvin.
Yep.
And that is, what is your specific focus, if any, in terms of your future investment?
Well, the investment focuses and directional, I think, can be quite wide open. As I said, right, since we are a financial services focused multi-diversity company, moving more into a conglomerate form, but still with lots of DNA remain in financial services, right? So I think any companies that are financial services in nature that are with good growth, good talents, I think we'll be interested. But I think anything that since we are very much focusing into building out the digital ecosystem, so any companies that could that we work together that could enable us empower, but really amplifying what we are currently building out for the overall ecosystem and beyond, I think we'll be interested. So it need not to be in the financial services field. As we said, that it could be community builder. It could be even like daily hope that they are completely into cooking classes, and also KOL type. But then I could also mention that something very powerful that I agree with King and also Norma is about social marketing, digital marketing. So I think this is another area that we are very much interested. So alongside when I build the AMTD digital roadmap, we actually have a particular vertical. We call it the digital marketing and data analytics, right? It's really that through from what we are building, that we want to work with more others to gain more insight into data. So the data power, I think, is the key for any future institution, but not just getting the data, but how to get relevancy out of every data. So I think we build out our data analytics team. So not that much those many ones in the mass market, but that this one is very unique that we're focusing into the data analytics from the point of supporting companies post they're entering the capital markets, right? So post IPO or post any listed securities or debt securities, we support them, collect their many data, help them with multi-diversity data analytics to get the rationalized sense or relevancy out of all the data, to basically empower them and provide the substance or the concrete content to alleviate and support their overall sophisticated communication with their investors, shareholders, business partners, right? So anyone that are into these different areas, welcome and please outreach to me.
Great. Well, you are very popular, Kelvin. There's another question for you. Okay, and that is now I think someone is really efficient. This belief is a gentleman already went on to your website to look at all the information, including your various portfolio companies. And the question is, basically this gentleman sees that maybe on the website, they see more Singaporean companies versus Hong Kong companies. So from your perspective, how do you compare the startup environments here in Hong Kong versus Singapore? So that's the question.
Sure. I think if you talk about comparison, if you start to comparing things, I think that's probably not the most diligent mindset. I think the right mindset to think about things is that actually, well, first of all, what are the business focuses of yourself, right? Then secondly, what are the different partners, different collaborating, institutions that you can work together to make yourself even more powerful or even more connected. So I think ultimately, from what I see, as AMTD, as a Hong Kong headquarter company, I never restrict myself into that. I must work within the boundary. I must not go into a particular areas, or I must go into one particular area. So I think it's really wide open. So not only that, when we talk about the data or the machines, right, that we see it as the mindset that open data, open API, but it's really also about our mind. Right? Be very much super open-minded, right? That we work with anyone that could be together creating more value powers, right? So then when I first built AMTD, right, I see it as we talk about it at minus time divide. I think as original Syndication days. So when I first built a company, I see the 4 words as aspiration, momentum, teamwork, and determination. But nowadays, right, it's really about how we see the new world, AI, machine, and also the digitalization technology, right? So I think again, right, so we must be very adapting to the current environment. So I think anyone that we see interested parties to work together, no matter Hong Kong, Singapore, Southeast Asia, across Asia, or even beyond that, we welcome.
Right. Well, we have probably time for one last question before we just draw a close to today's webinar. And that is a question also intended for Calvin.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now, the question is, obviously, the year 2020, 庚子年, right? This is an unprecedented year with a lot of changes, movements around the world. So there have been, of course, a lot of media coverage about, this, what's the current situation in Hong Kong, and how does it affect, the money flow or money flowing in or out? And in that sense, how can your firm help? Now, I guess before we sort of address this question, which is more about, at the end of the day, right, the confidence of the markets and whether or not the financial center position is still sound. Now, I think one thing before I let Calvin share his thoughts is I would highly encourage folks with this question in mind to go to the HKMA website. Essentially, there are lots of public information about money flow. And if you really follow the press releases and the facts, actually, it hasn't, despite all the the media coverage, actually it hasn't changed much in terms of money flowed out of Hong Kong. It's actually not as exaggerated as people may lead to think. So with that, I just want to see if Calvin can say a few words about your own observation and whether or not your firm can help.
Absolutely. I think, I myself as a Hong Kong-born Chinese, building out this AMTD company, I think over the past few years, I think not just for Hong Kong, Asia, but also the global space, I think we see more and more geopolitical uncertainties and also, different, uncertainties, I think, different topics, I think, surrounding the global world. I think, ultimately it's really about, first of all, your business vision, what you are intending to do about your business model or your business fundamental, how to actually be very focused and commit to it. And I think secondly, it's really about how to ensure that yourself, while implementing, what you think about the visions or the strategies, be very much committing and, working all the way, I think, through ups and downs, I think, of the overall cycling, right? So I think it's not about, again, right, whether you situate in one particular place or not. I think, if your model works, it works everywhere. If your model, I think, really caters for the needs or the pain points of a particular community, then it will work, right? So I think, from, you see that AMTD, I think we only, well, ourselves also is a startup. I think quite similar to, all the ones, I think, now guest speakers on this call. I only found this company or started to take leadership around 2015. So I think if you still recall, from 14, 15 and all the way till now, I think it's not everything every day smooth everywhere in the world or for Hong Kong or for Asia, right? But then we built it out, our businesses, right? So I think, the first day I, handled a company, I think it's with a net profit around $1 million US. So last year, I think we are already approaching or exceeding 150 million US dollar in terms of net profit. So I think Hong Kong provides lots of opportunities. I mean, Hong Kong, it provides enormous, power, I think, for startups similar to AMTD. So please come to Hong Kong.
Great. So great insights. I just want to thank our speakers, and I just want to, in a way, make a quick conclusion about the great interactions that we had in the past, 60 minutes. Now, at the end of the day, the one thing we would like to get the audience to experience yourself is that Hong Kong is a open and welcoming market. Now, when we look at the definition of a vibrant and successful ecosystem, this is also a question that I ask myself a lot. So what does that mean? Now, at the end of the day, the business is done among people. So a successful and vibrant ecosystem would consist of partners, like AMTD and also the portfolio companies. Hopefully all of you can get experience, right? We are trying to be very helpful in a way to help each other to grow together. So not only from the private sector side, but also from the public sector. So that's why we work very closely. It's a close-knit community that we are helping each other succeed. So in a way, our definition is to be helpful and resourceful. Now, so with that, I think that this is a good way to wrap up this webinar today. So hopefully you take something useful from this sharing. And one last thing I just want to highlight is that this is a very important sort of juncture in which this webinar is a way kicking off our global virtual roadshows. Because as many of you may recognize that Invest Hong Kong, we don't operate just in Hong Kong. In fact, we have offices in 31 countries, 31 cities around the world, in which we are going to kick off these virtual roadshows in July. That we are reaching out to literally, all the corners around the world to look for the smart and passionate people to invite them to join us in the Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem. Because our strong belief and mindset is that for Hong Kong to continue to progress, we have to have the best brains from around the world to make us successful. And also we have all the passionate folks to help each other. This is how we can win in the long term. So with that, I just want to really thank our guests today, Calvin, Johnson, Val, and Norma for the excellent sharing of insights. And I'm sure that our audience also learned a lot from all of you. And I just want to appreciate your time and the sharing today. Thank you so much. And then I don't know, for the audience on the call, I wish you a great day and a fantastic business going forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.